Hi, my name is Liz, and I am with Hope and Healing Therapy and Hope and Growth. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and coach, and I'm so glad you joined us today. What we wanted to talk about today was conflict. We as human beings are social creatures. We like to be around other people, we like to talk to other people, be it online or in person. And the reality is, whenever we are engaging with someone else, there is potential for conflict. Conflict can be really uncomfortable, especially if it's someone we care about or someone we're working with or someone where the stakes are high. And it's super important to be able to successfully manage and navigate conflict so we can walk away feeling like we are able to move forward with that person. The good news is that handling it doesn't have to be that difficult. We can actually talk about some tools today on how to handle conflict so we are able to stay proactive and stay with healthy relationships as we continue to grow together. So, I wanted to share a few tips today that might be useful for you when it comes to managing conflict. The first tip we wanted to talk about: active listening. Now, anyone who's been to therapy or coaching probably knows all about this, but it is always useful to remind ourselves that active listening is key when we are engaging with anyone. And quite honestly, it's even more important when we are in a conflictual situation. For those of you who may not know what active listening is, it is actually the skill of being able to truly hear what the other person is saying. My dad used to always make this statement where he would say, make sure that we are listening to hear and not listening to respond. How often do we hear what someone is talking to us about with our mind is starting to formulate how we're going to actually respond to what they're saying? But what if we made it a point to do nothing else but hear what they were saying? Pro tip for those of you who have not been to therapy or coaching and wanted to know how to really make sure that you are fully engaged in active listening: once someone is done speaking, starting your response with the phrase that says, "Now, if I understand what you said," and then be able to recite back what you understood from the information that the other person shared with you. The beautiful thing about it is it truly stops them from listening to respond. Instead, it is giving them an opportunity to make sure that their message is clear. And it also makes sure that you are understanding it, even if you are interpreting it with different words or different intonations, but at least you both are now getting closer to being on the same page. There's high value in actually being able to understand each other before conflict escalates even higher. The second thing we want to consider when we are talking about conflict is not taking it personally. I know that's easier said than done, and especially when tensions are high, you're going to hear things and it's going to feel like it's an attack on you. But when you recognize that this is a tough conversation or this is a conflict that we need to resolve, the sooner we're able to step away from taking it personally or thinking that they're doing an intentional attack, we're going to be able to actually hear what's being said. Now, sometimes, let's be real, when we're having conflict, some of us do use personal attacks to kind of get that dig in or get our words in. But most of the time, when we're in conflict, it's just meant to be a barb to hurt, not necessarily something that is truly a part of what's going on or what true feelings are. A lot of times, we're going to have a tendency, especially with people we're close to, a lot of times we're going to have a tendency to use the things that we are most vulnerable on and stick with it. And if we're able to remind ourselves, hey, we're in a high tense conflict filled situation, let me not take this personally, let me practice my active listening, it's going to really take you very far. The next thing to think about is understanding conflict styles. Do you know what your conflict style is? I am a conflict style of when I am feeling stressed or under pressure or feeling that kind of intensity in a conversation, I have a tendency to shut down. I'll stop talking because for me, I want to be able to gather my thoughts before I respond. I don't want to be the person that uses barbs or raises my voice. So as a result, I have a tendency to want to kind of collect myself, go into myself, and then come back and talk again. But other people want to immediately handle. They want to process quickly. They want to be able to get it off their mind, get it off their chest, and be able to move on. But for someone like me who doesn't do well with a conflict response like that, how are the two of us going to be able to truly communicate? One of us is going to shut down, one of us is going to be completely vocal, and it's just not going to work. So, one, being aware of what our own conflict style is, and then two, being aware of the conflict style of the person that you are in conflict with is going to be a real key in being able to determine, can we try to hash this out right now? Should we wait a little bit? What's going to be best to actually come to a resolution? And then another step that we could actually recommend is, big picture, all of us could afford to take a step back. Again, conflict, tensions are high, we're feeling stressed out, we're hearing some emotional words that are probably coming our way. We may not be thinking clearly because we are hearing these conflict words. We are being very strong in the position that we have. Being able to just step away, collect ourselves, and then regroup and have the discussion really goes a long way. Being able to separate ourselves from that emotionality that high conflict can bring is going to really help if we're truly trying to find a resolution. Now, there are going to be some topics that we'll never be able to get to that place because it's truly just an opinion based situation. But if we're trying to figure out something about our lives or about our careers, or quite honestly, about the function of the business that we're working in, being able to step away, gather our thoughts, get ourselves to a place where we're not feeling emotional, we don't feel like we're shut down or we're ready to blab, we're going to be able to find a much smoother way to have that conversation. The next step, expressing empathy. This one's going to be a tough one, especially if you disagree with what they're saying. How can we sit back and recognize that if someone's feeling impassioned about something, it's because they're feeling passion about it. If conflict is coming up, it's probably because they feel really strongly about the topic that they're wanting to talk about. So being able to sit back and have that moment, like we just discussed, and then be able to actually express empathy for understanding the position that they're coming from is going to go a long way in helping manage that conflict. It's going to really help. You don't have to necessarily change your mind or agree with them, but to be able to say, I can kind of get where they're coming from and why they're coming from that way. They're wrong or not, but I'm going to be able to at least understand their perspective. Another thing we're going to talk about when we are talking about conflict and tense situations is recognize that we're not looking for victory. We're looking for a compromise. The reality is, when you are in these situations, these tense conversations, it is typically going to be with a person that you care about in some capacity, be it a coworker, a friend, a partner, a parent. There's going to be a situation where you recognize that there's some level of care that I have for this person. So to be able to come away and say victory is wonderful, but at the same time, recognizing that if this is a high tense topic, being able to recognize that we just want to have some compromise rather than looking for me to win or it's a failure. Reminding ourselves that compromise is our goal, not victory, is going to be another key. Another one, and the biggest step to really recognize, is that sometimes there's a need to call for backup. Sometimes these conversations are really heavy or really tense, and there's not going to be a way through with just the two of us talking it through. Maybe we need to call in a trusted friend or another family member, or quite honestly, a coach or a therapist. Someone who could offer a different opinion, someone who could almost work as a referee, someone who's going to help us kind of balance what the conflict is, help us both see a little bit more clearly what we are working towards, and then help us find that compromise that works for all of us. As we talked about, you can see that conflict with someone that we care about is something that can be really tense. But again, it is something that we can get through if we just put a couple of steps in to showing care and consideration for each other. Again, we're going to start with active listening. We're going to make sure we say, if I understand you correctly, and be able to recite in your language what you understood your friend, partner, coworker was saying. We're going to make sure that we take a step back, being able to just kind of sit back, see if we can keep ourselves separate from the situation so we don't allow ourselves to get emotionally entangled in what we're talking about. We're going to make sure to express empathy, even if we disagree. Being able to talk through and see it from their perspective gives us a little bit more insight about the conflict that we're talking about. We're going to remind ourselves to look for compromise, not victory, recognizing that there is going to be no winner, but there's going to be two people who can actually manage to come together. That's going to be the victory that we'll recognize. And then finally, we're going to know when we need to call for backup. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit more intense than just the two of us being able to hash it out. And maybe we need to bring someone in, family friend, family member, the pastor, a therapist, a coach. Somebody might be useful to kind of help offer that additional perspective. I hope this information was helpful. And if you are ever feeling like you do need to call for backup, please feel free to give us a call. We are, again, Hope in Healing and Hope in Growth. And we hope you have a great day. Have a good one. Bye bye.